Let's talk about usernames, uh, groups, UIDs, group IDs. Let's talk about passwords. Let's talk about shadow files and all those things. Now, we've discussed this thing in previous videos that our we have got users in Linux, and we've got one powerful user in Linux called root. That's a super user, right? And the rule of the rule is actually um, avoid using root. Create users and log in with those users, and only assume the role of root only when you want to do a task that needs a privileged user. But on a day-to-day, avoid logging in as root. And we then said users are saved under a file called, it's under etc PASSD file. So these are the users that are in my Linux here. And you remember what we did last time. We said delimiter will be this, and we said we want field 1, and now we see, okay, this our users. Then even went as far as counting the number of users in my Linux there, right? So these are the users. I'm just going to run this command again. These are our users, and with these users there are other fields that we need to explain in this file, right? The first field, as we saw now, it contains the users. So if you say first field, you'll see your users. If you go to the second field, you see something different now. It says X, right? And now if these users, the second field is X. In the past, Linux used to store passwords for the users in the etc password file, but you can see probably you are aware that is a security problem, because the file etc, let's check the permissions. If you check this file, you'll see that it can be read by everyone others, you see. So this is a problem. And now then in later versions of Linux, they removed passwords from etc password to a file called etc shadow. You see the permissions there now. They are more secure compared to your etc password permissions. So that's where it was moved, okay? And now under etc password, they just put X, okay? Now if now we check field 3, if you check field 3, sorry, what am I doing? What am I doing? Oh, sorry, I'm listing instead of cat. Okay, so we see now field 3 is just got some stuff here. Let's check. So we spoke about first field, spoke about the second field. Now let's talk about the third field, this one here. So now the third field has got something interesting. These numbers here, let me print them this way. These are what we call, guys, user IDs. Remember, I think it was the first videos that we recorded explain the user ID. So these are user IDs for each user. For example, if I want to see the ID of root user, you'll see 0 there. Is the first one here. And if I want to see for this user, is you see that it's 101 here, and 101 will be this one. So these are the UIDs, right? Yeah, so UIDs are very important. Remember what I said about user IDs. When operating system is dealing with files and whatnot, this is actually used for permissions. You know. Yes, we use user names, but the operating system uses user IDs. They don't even care about these names, okay? So please remember that. So the user ID is the one that determines what a user can do. So if I am given a permission to a file, my user ID is actually in that file metadata, you know, and to say this particular this user ID has got access to this file and his permissions are 1, 2, 3. Okay. So now I want to show you something. I'm going to add a user here. I think we spoke about that. So I'm going to add a user called Linux test, and I'm going to create a password for Linux test. Now I've got a user. I can actually even switch to Linux test, and you see when I say ID, I'm logged in as Linux test. This is my user ID. I'm 1002. Okay, I can find it even here. So something that I want to show you. The lower UIDs that are from 0 to 999 are used for system accounts, and anything that is above 999 are usually reserved for users that are these are the users that are used for by us as people, you know. So anything above 999, you know that basically this was probably a UID that is associated with the user that was added. That is not even user ID for the system. This is the user ID for the particular person who uses that for logging into the machine. Okay, so let's see if we can do something here. So we know that it's field 3, right? So So now in my small account command there, what I'm doing, I am printing users that have got, let me see, 1 2 3, but I don't know 999 there. Why 81 is there? Okay, I think I know. Maybe, let's see. Okay, yeah. So now if I run that command, I actually filter to say I want to see users that have got the user ID that is above 999, and you'll see that I've got a user called EC2 user, I've got a user called Bozete, NFS nobody, and Linux test. Okay, now let's carry on. We saw that, then we can go to another one called, no, sorry, let's use cat. Delimiter will be this field 4 now. Sorry, field 4 has got numbers as well, and this field 4, these numbers are group IDs, no? So if I say root an ID root, it shows that my UID is 0, my group ID is 0. So this is the group ID here. Okay, and there is a, okay, oh, okay. I wanted to show you guys. What's the name? Group, change group name. Okay, I seems to have forgotten how to use this command, but it's fine. So we know that field 4, it has got group IDs, okay, and then we then said I can check and say group ID is this is my user ID that we spoke about, this is my group ID. Okay, remember something about groups. Each user is a member of at least one group. Each user is a member of at least one group. But this user can belong to many groups, can belong to more than one. But you cannot say I don't belong to any group. You must belong to at least one group. And remember that groups as well are used for permissions. What are you allowed to do? What are you allowed to execute, and all those things. And the reason why we have got groups is because imagine if you have got 100 users that are in your machine, and you need to give them access to a new folder that you just created, and now you're supposed to manually maybe add them. But if you use groups, the nice thing is you give a group access to whatever that you want to give access to, then whoever who is in that group will automatically be granted permissions into that directory, that file, or whatever that you want to do. So that's the nice thing. It makes managing users much easier. So they're very, very important. So there is another field here. I want to add another user, but this time add photo. Then I want to add this and say testing comment. Okay, now let's apply password to this user. And now I want us to check this file, and I just added this user here, and you'll see something interesting here. Testing commands. You saw that I use -c. Now this field here, this field will be field 5 if I'm counting correctly. That will be field 5, and not all users have got comments. So you see that some then have comments. C is for comments. I added a comment. It's it makes managing easy. You know, when someone comes and work on your machine, it becomes easy for him to know what this particular user does, or why is added in that server, and all those things, and by adding a comment. And that this is Apache Tomcat user, this is a DNS user, this is a cloud user, this is whatever, you know. And so you can add comments like this user should not be deleted, this user blah blah blah, all those kind of things. Okay, so yes, now let's go to field 6. Now field 6, that's a home directory of the user. Home directory of the user. Sorry. So you'll see that home directory here is this one. If I were to let me switch user to Boto, and I say where am I, you will see that if I say print working directory, you see that it's home book. This is my home directory. Okay, so I can actually change it there and say home directory is no longer under home, but it's somewhere else. Okay, now let's check another field. Now we get another field that is very interesting. It tells us about the shell, or the command that will be executed, or the program that will be executed upon login, and that will be bash on most of the users, and others is no login. No login is interesting. It's when you've got a user, and this user, it's a system user, for example, and you don't want by mistake that user to be used for logging in. Okay, now let's just do this and see which users have got no login here. So I'm just gonna quickly do this and say okay, I'm just gonna say no login, and I'm gonna say that, and I'm gonna print. So I'm printing everything that all the users that have got no login. And so what happens now, if I take this user, and you see that I cannot switch user to this user. Remember, he's got no login. This account is currently not available. You know, you can take this one. Same thing, it's complaining about the same thing. Understand? So this is the simplest way. Let's say you've got a user who is going on leave, and you don't want this user to log in from home. You can quickly deal with him this way, and you know that you won't be able to log in when when he's home. There's another file that you can create that is very interesting, that can prevent all users from logging into your Linux. Maybe you are busy with some important updates and whatever in your machine. You can actually touch a command under a file under etc no login, and if this file exists, no user will be able to log in to this machine except root. Okay, except root. So I'm going to go ahead and delete it again. Except root. Okay, so you can use that user if you want to prevent all other users except super user from logging in to your machine. Now, we spoke about shadow file. We said the passwords were moved from password file to shadow file because of security. And now, okay, actually, before I can go to shadow file, you can actually even say vi password, meaning you want to edit this file. It is not recommended, okay, because you don't want to mess up with the format of this file or anything. It is not really recommended, even though you can edit it, avoid. But if you want to edit it, if you really want to edit it, and you can use this command vipw, will make sure that you don't mess up things in here. Okay, vipw. So yes, you can use that one. Okay, let's go to a etc shadow file. That's where now we find passwords. If you see here, passwords will be this long encrypted number. So passwords are encrypted. This is not it. This is encrypted, okay? And so now the first field is the user name that corresponds with the user that is under password, and the second field will be the encrypted password. Okay, so now if I say delimiter is this field 2, you'll see that this would be the encrypted. Then field this one would be let me see okay, let me see what is this again. Okay, now this will be the last date when the password was changed, counting from 1970. Is it not 1970 January the 1st? You know, go and read about epoch date. You know, it's very, very important, this date in Linux. This one, very, 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 very important. Many things are counted or calculated from that date. So now what you see on that field is the days since January 1, 1970 that the password was last changed. So if you see here, you can be able to do your calculations and tell when last did I change the password. Okay, now if we go to now field 4, and field 4, not all the users and password have got field 4. This is the days before password may be changed. If you set it, you'll be able to see it here, but I'll show you another command, ch, and we'll talk about it. We'll talk about this command, but let's carry on with what we're doing here. Field 5. Days after which password must be changed. So if it's 99, it's like disabled. by default it's like that unless you change it. So you can make it 90 days, it's up to you. So yeah, now 6, this is the day before password is to expire that user is warned. Like let's say your password is about to expire, please change your password. So that would be the field. Okay, and now let's talk about this. So this command is change age, list particular email visit. So you'll see that last password change was September 03 today or tomorrow. What's my, I think it's out of date, this thing. Let's see. Okay, it was changed yesterday according to this. Okay, let's change yesterday. Password expire, password inactive. All these things are not set up, right? We can change some of these things here by saying maybe you want password to expire December 2018. Okay, what's the, not sure about the, okay, yeah. Now if we change age and we say list and now it will show you the expiry date of account, February. I think that is, let me see, 2012. January 2016. I'm not sure about the format, guys. 2018, 12, 20. Here we go. Okay, so the format is year, month, and day. So yeah, so January, December 2018, account will expire. So we can then even set things like set minimum number of days before password change. Warning is this one. You can do that. Putting that here, say 3 days, and now when we list it again, we can see that now it will start warning this user when he's left with 3 days. Maximum number of days is set the maximum of days before password change to max. So we can say you must wait for a week before you can even try to change his password again. So that's where we can then say 7 here, and when we do that, you say that, and minimum number of days before password maximum number of days, no, I'm wrong here. It would be 90. Let's say we want him to change password every 90 days, and here after 90 days, okay, then the other one would be the minimum. It's my case small, we say 7 days. Okay, so now if we go and list, that's what it is here. And password inactive, never, and let me see something. So now if I do that and list this user again, I run a command that is very interesting there. So if I do that, am I able to see here? Okay, I want us to check this user because I ran a command. So where is pository here? Where is that user called Bozet? Okay, let's see something under shadow files for Bozet. Yes, you see. Now, if you see this double exclamation mark before the encrypted password, you know that this user is locked. Okay, it's locked, cannot be able to log in. So it's because I ran a command, and this one, then I put the user. Let me show you. If I cat shadow again, but does not have that double exclamation mark. If I then run that, should say log this user, and you'll see now it's got double exclamation mark to say this user is locked, you know. And so that's if you do want someone to log in, you can do this, and you will have dealt with that person. I won't be able, so now it's gone. Let's do the same with the Bozet to allow him to be to log in to this. Now if we cat this thing again, double exclamation mark is gone, this user can be able to log in. Okay, this is user management. It's important, I guess, for every operating system. So I said to you, it is not advisable to edit this file manually. The same applies with the shadow file. Yes, you see, it's not, you see here it says read only. It's a read only, okay, but you can still force it and write stuff in there with root. However, it is not recommended. If you really want to edit this file manually, I don't know for what reason, but you can use this command there, vipw-s. This is a good way. It will make sure that you don't mess up with this file. Now, I spoke about groups, right? We said a user belongs to at least one group. So you see this one belongs to this becomes a primary user. So a user can belong to more than one group. We have another command here called user modifying, like modification. You can use user mod for modify. To modify a user, we can say we want to modify user EC2 what's the name, and to say we want to add this, what's the name of that user? Oh, I put UC2. So now if I say ID EC2 user, you will see now this user's got its primary group is this. It belongs to secondary groups, and I've added another secondary group there. So this shows that a user can belong to one or more groups, but a user must have at least one group. So to check, we've got a separate file that hosts our groups. That would be the one here, and this will be the group ID and all that. And yes, this file as well, avoid editing it manually. If there is a need, I don't know, you can use this command. Okay, edit a user that file. Very important files for user management. When you add a user, those files are automatically being created for you. You don't have to edit them manually. So let me see if I can help you to see what's happening if a user is added. Let me see if I can help you. Yeah. I'm just gonna see something. Just give me a moment. Just give me a moment. Just wanna see something. Just wanna see one system call. Yeah. So I'm just gonna do this and say user and test 1, 2, 3. Yeah, this is what I want. So if you run a command user add, you see that command, it then calls system calls, and that system call called access system call will go and access this file and add some stuff in there, and it will then do this because now it checks if this directory exists. If it does not exist, if I ran the full stack trace, you will see what it's doing, but it will go and create this home directory, okay, and it will then put some stuff in there like .mozilla and other. So if let's check another system call. Let's check open. Let's check access and say add user this one. Okay, let me do this. I don't know if I can change these things. Let me see. Okay. Wow. Let's see. Okay, just gonna add another user here. But I want to see open system call. Now these are the files that are being opened when you add a user. Like it opens it opens this, as I told you, it opens groups, it opens shadow. So now what I was telling you, you see it here. This command will automatically go and edit those files for you and add relevant things for you. For example, I can go to okay, a shadow file. I can then cat shadow, and you see that it added, as I say, add user. Okay, so yeah, I hope I'm not moving too fast. I hope I'm not moving too fast. So you can then run user del for deleting. You can do -r for recursively, so that it deletes even the home directories that were already created. So I'm just going to delete this one, gonna delete this one. Okay, I'm gonna delete this one. Oh, what is this? Gonna delete that one. I'm gonna delete this one. Cool. Now, yes, please read more on user management. I'm just trying to quickly show you a few things that I think are important. Spoke about user mode. Now, there are a few files that are very important. One of them would be, let's go to it, it's called login.dev. Here we find some interesting stuff. Yeah, you read there, and things like password maximum days, you can set them here. As you create users, they will inherit the configurations that you have set up in here. So like your UID mean, that's why I said it, anything from 199, we know that it's the users that we added for people. And it says the maximum UID would be this, meaning we are only allowed to have 5,000 users, but you can play with these numbers. And these are system accounts, you see here, from 21 to 199. Okay, so GID, same thing as well there. And yeah, just take time, like create home directory. We saw that immediately, as soon as I create a user, the home directory as well is created. It's because of this parameter, the create home directory is equals to yes. Encryption method, you see there, it uses this one when it encrypts the password. Yeah, UMask, we'll talk about it. It uses 022 as a default, and yes, and all these things are important, so take time and look at that file. Another file that is important, let's zoom into it actually as well, and that would be under default and password. Okay. Or user add. Yeah, so this is a default. When it starts there. This is the home directory, parent home directory, the default shell, the skeleton folder where it's found, skeleton config where it's found, and all other things. Now, actually, it's important that we need to talk about skeleton. This scale stands for skeleton. So then the interesting stuff here, it's actually not even a directory. It's not a file, it's a directory. So the interesting stuff here is anything in here will automatically be copied to any user that is being created. Let me show you now. If I touch if I touch these files here, I've got this file, right? Remember, other files are not shown because they are hidden using dot in front. Okay, so I've got all this file. If now I say user add, let me actually delete. I don't want to have too many users. Let me delete photo, and then let's find that. And let me user add. Okay, let me delete this one. Okay, sure. Now I want to say user add bottom. Okay, now check something. If I now sudo as bottom, you'll see that those files exist in there. No, because anything that is in scale directory will be automatically copied to the home directory of the newly created user. So this is a quick way of sharing configurations with users as they are added, or whatever that you can think of. You know your environment, your challenges, that and all those things. So you can use this command, and you'll see that it's very, very nice. Remember, when we started, we spoke about files like your profile. We spoke about bash rc, and we spoke again about, let me just list them. Let me go to home directory of maybe Boto, and we spoke about things like this one. So we said this file, this one here, this one, we said this one is used for default settings for all users when starting a login shell, right? And I'm not gonna go deep into it because it's not the first time we're speaking about it. We spoke about this one, used to define defaults for all users when starting a sub shell. Okay, so and then we spoke about when we spoke about this one, and that one we said specific settings for one user applied when starting a sub shell. This, if it's under his home directory, it only applies to him or her. If it's under etc, this is settings that will apply to all users when they start sub shell. If it's this one under etc, then we know that it applies to all users as they start their first login shell. Okay, for example, let me go to it and say, get in there, you know, go to the end of the file. I'm going to start few lines and say alias. I'm going to create an alias. Alias will be a name that is associated with a command. So when I now write Tieho, it will call maybe something like IPA, maybe for listing my IP. So now if I exit and okay, you see now I've got a command called Tieho, is because it was taken from this file, because I did an alias here. So remember I said it applies to all users. Okay, you see it applies. Now I'm logged in as Boto, and now I'm root, but it's still there, and I can change. I can log in as another user, and it exists, you know. So if I remove it from here and let's say I put it under this user. So let me check something first. If I put it under this user and say alias deal is equals to IPA, you see this is user Boto, right? It's because under his sub shell profile I've got alias this one, and it's user Boto. If I now go to another user and there's no alias called Tieho, because it does not belong in this person sub. What? Oh, this is, I've done it long ago. You see, this one is ls, guys. let me go to another user, and let me go to maybe EC2 user and cat.bash profile and say Tieho. There's no such command, but when I log in as auto, there is such command, because I'm explaining it again. Under this command, under this, there is that alias. It only applies to that. Okay. And we spoke about groups. If you want to add a group, you will use group add I don't know, Bapi. And now if you now say, if you cat groups, there is a group now called Bapi. I've got a user called Boto, and I've got a user called Boto, and his group ID is Boto. I can then do this and add Bapi as a secondary group to Boto. And now if I now run this, you see now Bapi is now a secondary group in this user called Boto. You see, you can add a group and associate it with with an existing group. Okay, interesting. You can specify a group when you create your user, because usually the default user will be the same name as the default group will be the same name as the user. You can if you don't want that, you can say, let's say you want to add a group, a user called check, and you want the group to be called normal, you know, that will okay. Remind me again. Seems like I'm getting sick. What's happening? Okay, let me check quickly. Name or ID of the permanent. That's a secondary. Trying to quickly check here. Quickly. Okay, something quickly that I forgot. The group has to exist first. So the group has to exist first, then that will go through. So if I do that, you will see that the default group for this user is normal. Okay, and now let let me see my notes and see how far are we from finishing. What's the time? Okay, I think I'll have to cut it here